Right, we are watching the developer blog. So I used to do this with Gears of War, where we'd watch the developers talk and the community feedback and give my thoughts. So I haven't been playing PoE2 because I've not been enjoying the game. The devs have got together with GGZII to do a talk, a discussion about the game. So I'm just going to listen to it and give my feedback. Now, it is 2 hours long. So if I sit and give my thoughts on everything, it's probably going to be 4 hours long. So this might be a very long video, or this might just be a Twitch VOD that nobody else sees. We'll see. I will start off by saying I think it's good that, you know, Ziz is sitting down and hopefully being a little bit combative with the devs. But I will also say that it is far, far easier to be combative and, you know, a little bit negative when it is accepted in the community. Meaning, it's far harder to stand up when everybody's been super positive and say, hey, I actually really want to chat to the devs and, you know, be very critical about a certain few things and stick to my guns, than it is to say, oh, the community is really, really negative. So I'm allowed to sort of go at them. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to say that there's a bad element about doing this interview, but I'm just trying to put the point out there that it is a lot easier to be directly negative when the community accept it. It's far harder to go against the grain, and at the moment there are a lot of people that are feeling negative about the game. And so it's a good opportunity, shall we say, if we're being cynical, to come out, fight for the community, you know, kind of look like the guy that's putting his neck on the line, when really we're not really putting our neck on the line, because it's widely accepted that the game is in not a great state. However, saying that, look, we don't need to bash somebody for doing something good. This is a good interview. It's good he arranged it. There was no need for him to arrange it, so there's only positives for Ziz doing this. So I'm pleased he's doing this, and let's just have a look at what is said, because I've no idea what is said in this. Genuinely, I haven't looked at anything. So we're going in blind, and I'm looking forward to figuring out if PoE2 is going to be the game for me in the future.
Just like a quick intro and then we go. But yeah. Thank you so much for joining me here for a podcast after the launch of PoE2. This is Jonathan and Neon, for those that don't know, directors of GGG. And yeah, we're here to talk about the launch.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, it's always good to have a chat. You know, obviously it's a bit of a contentious launch in some ways this time, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about that. But you know, it's always good to have a chat.
Yeah. No, I do have a lot of questions, so I think we'll just get right into it.
Sure.
A lot of people are pretty
Okay, sorry to be Reddit armchair psychologist, but from the get-go, Jonathan, I'll be honest, he kind of looks a bit miffed that he's got to do this. And I can't blame him, because let's be real. In a vacuum, they are the developers. They've built this really cool game. And now you've got to sit there and, no disrespect, but you've been grilled by a streamer that's saying your game's shit. I imagine that's what's about to happen. And so you're probably thinking, fucking hell, I wish I wasn't in this position. So with all respect to, I suppose, everybody involved, it's good that this is happening, because it will be interesting to see how everybody reacts to this, because I've been on developer streams myself with Gears where the devs were super positive and really enjoyed the criticism because they were like, oh, this guy's super passionate. Some devs are kind of like, shut the fuck up, we know what we're doing. No idea what's going to happen, so I'm just going to let it roll now and shut up.
happy with the current state of the game, especially like our relative power to the monsters earlier on. And obviously we are finding some builds that are feeling okay and that are stronger, but I'm asking, are the slower and more challenging builds the intended pace of the game?
Well, I don't know that. Once again, I mean, we get this question a lot, right? Of just the like, what is the pace of the game supposed to be? And I honestly find it hard to answer that because of the way that like there isn't really a like an obvious way to even quantify that, given that players have so many different abilities. What I will make all I can say is that if people are unhappy, then we will keep on improving things until they're not unhappy anymore. Because ultimately, we want to get the smooth progression where you start the game, you feel weak, you get stronger, you get stronger, you get stronger, you keep on feeling stronger and stronger. And you have to have that progression where you're feeling more and more powerful as you're going through. So if you're not feeling that, then that means there's something that we have to improve and get better. So it really comes down to okay, if you're talking about a weaker build, well, what build is it? And then we'll be looking into that and seeing what we can do to improve it. We just have to go through these things one at a time.
So I think right now.
So I do agree with that in the sense of PoE is a bit of a strange game. You can't really say to somebody PoE is a slow or a fast game, even PoE 1, because you could play hardcore SSF in PoE 1 with, let's say, Blade Vortex, be super tanky and trudge your way through the game. Or you could play Lightning Arrow with a Headhunter and be obliterating everything, and you could say it's one of the fastest games I've played. So when you say, hey, how is the game intended to be played? I think what they're trying to say is, well, there's not really a correct way to play PoE or a correct pace. But whichever pace you pick, whether it's a slow pace or a fast pace, you should be feeling a bit weak at the beginning and then progressing. For me, what's happening is you're feeling way too weak. Then all of a sudden, when you get a bit of gear, there's a big jump. And then because there's no real crafting or no real end game kind of stuff, you don't really progress anymore. Because there's not crazy, megalomaniacs inside of a cluster jewel custom passive tree, right? You're very limited in how much power you can get in PoE2.
The problem is that it's almost every build this week for a lot of archetypes, and that it's more it's definitely in the minority that people are like, oh, I found something that works. So it's almost the reverse there. And I guess I'm curious, what amount of time are you expecting people to take going through the entire campaign, or on your own test run, or when you're doing test runs, how long do you take on a first campaign run?
I actually haven't measured that on the current version, and it doesn't necessarily always work that way. The number of times I play through the full, and when I say campaign here, I'm talking about 6 acts, not just 3.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the amount of time, doing that, I might only do that that full run 2 or 3 times in total as we're developing a class.
Yeah.
Much more often I'm either testing this part or I'm testing that part or whatever. And I honestly am not sure exactly what amount of time that's taking. But as I said, I don't know that the time. The thing is, the presupposition with this question is that that we have a goal in mind for the amount of time for the campaign. And the implication of that is that the campaign itself is not fun. But it's if that's the implication, then we just want to make that fun, right? It's the campaign should be fun to play. The amount of time it takes, to me, is not nearly as relevant as just make it fun, right? If you aren't having fun, we want to make sure that it is. So that's why, when we're okay, people are saying we don't like the Act 3 areas, make those shorter. It's well, what amount of, I don't think that quantifying that in an amount of time is the right way to look at it. It's here are some areas that are unfun. I'll make those areas fun, and then whatever the duration of time that takes will not be bothering you. And that may result in the areas becoming shorter, but making it shorter is not it isn't a time metric that we are looking at to determine whether or not the game is good. Is the game good fun to play? So that I guess is kind of the way that I would look at things. And that's...
Yeah, so I agree with that. I actually agree with that. What he's trying to say is, if you tell them, hey, Jonathan, I've played 10 hours of this campaign. Used to take me 6 on PoE. Now it's taking me double in PoE2. It's taking me 12 hours to get to the end game. I'm really unhappy with that. Can you make it shorter? Well, I guess that kind of implies, yeah, the game's not fun for those 6 to 12 hours. So simply changing it to, say, going from 12 hours to 8 hours, let's say they managed to slash off 4 hours of campaign playtime. If you're not enjoying it for 12 hours, you're probably not going to enjoy it for 8 hours. Because for me, in PoE 1, I don't actually think about how long the campaign takes because it's not that painful anymore. The only time I would say time comes into it and probably how I would have worded the question a little bit differently, is even if your campaign is amazingly fun, let's say it takes 15 hours and it's super fun, most people are playing for that end game, and so if it takes 15 hours to get to the end of the game, you're probably less likely to play a lot less characters. But on the flip side, if those 15 hours were really fun, then you might roll more characters. So I'm not just trying to be, you've seen my videos, I disagree with a lot of what GGG are doing, but I actually think so far they're making a lot of sense. I don't think the time the campaign takes is relevant at all. I think it has to be fun. If it's fun, you're not bothered about the time. The only reason you're mentioning the time is because the campaign isn't fun. That's the actual issue, not the time.
I think what puts us a little bit, like when it comes to communication with the community, like people will have their opinion about what they think is the reason that the game isn't fun, and they might be right or they might not be right or whatever, but at the end of the day what we're looking at is just like, okay, you're obviously having a bad time, we want to fix that, so we're going to look at so what we'll do is we'll be like, okay, so you're saying Act 3 isn't good, we'll look at Act 3, we'll look at the reasons why it might be bad, we'll fix those reasons, and then that may or may not reduce the time. Or in this case, it definitely will. Like, it's shortened it by a lot. But to me, it's like the frustrating thing is when you go down a dead end and you're like, okay, like this is bad, or and then like you have to respawn, or in the area doesn't, like the area despawns, and you're like, you have to do things again, that kind of stuff, right? That's the stuff that people don't like to do. And so that's where we sort of look at. And so then when it coming back to builds again, once again, it's like, okay, if you're not having fun with your build, then that is a problem. We'll fix that. But it's not like there's a correct pace for the game to be played at as such. We just need to make sure that you're enjoying yourself. Well,
I guess a follow-up to that was I, along with many others, were not expecting a nerf to just how the campaign felt in general, right? In the last interview I heard, it really sounded like the intention was to target things at the top end. But there were so many things that nerfed us during the campaign here. And
the thing I would say about that,
I would like to finish.
I would like to finish. Maybe I'm totally out of touch, but I'm speaking from somebody that's quite genuinely been on a developer's podcast before, so I'm not speaking out my arse. I was on Gears 5 developer podcasts and in the matches. Even though you want to finish your point, right? If the developer starts speaking, right? To be honest, he is the star of the show. You should let him finish. It is nice that Ziz wants to get his point across and, stand up for himself. I respect that. But I think that's going to make some tensions. I think if you're going to do a really hard interview on someone, you got to give him some breathers when you can. So I'm surprised he's interrupting Jonathan here. That would tilt me the fuck off, but we'll see how it goes.
Sure. Okay.
A lot of people are really wondering about the long-term direction for the game with that in mind, because they were also not expecting that. So a lot of people are wondering
if the campaign, to be clear,
that was going to be my question.
That was not our intention.
So
yeah, we
should be more powerful than we currently are during the campaign then.
Well, that one I will have to look at specific cases, right? Because like that comes down to like okay, so like we already did something about that, right? Where we like nerfed Monster Life, and it's possible that we'd have to nerf Monster Life again if that's still a problem. Like that's the kind of thing that we can do. But the thing is that like the as I said, like the first thing we heard when everyone was saying this, the first thing we thought was like, what the hell? We didn't even nerf the campaign. Like literally, that's what all developers were saying. We didn't nerf this. Why is everyone saying we nerfed it? And so like then it's like, well, we found a few things, but like we're still looking for what those things are. And like it's not always necessarily obvious with all the changes that you make and things, because I can absolutely tell you that our goal here was nerf the end game, right? Like nerf no, it wasn't even nerf the end game. What it was nerf the things that were trivializing the end game before you've even managed to get like your items and stuff like that. Like just the really trivial, easy shit. Like that was our intention.
I mean, there were some blatant fuck ups.
Yeah.
Speaking bluntly, right? Like the minion change was just bad.
And when you say the minion change, are you referring to the rare minions or referring to the player minions? Because those are both. Well, both of those were incredibly terrible.
Just fuck up. Yes.
Those were just fuck ups. And the thing is, it's so easy for shit for like that to slip through.
Well, we have a bit.
So, I think here, I know I am not happy with PoE2, but I have spoke to devs before, and I have, I've looked at these types of things before. I've only ever seen, in fairness to TC, which is the coalition from Gears 5, I've not seen, and I think there's Warframe as well, that devs sit down on a podcast and actually like chat about the game very, very openly. And it is very, very rare for a company to say, yeah, that was actually a pile of shit that we did there. Like, that just slipped through. And I know people like to think of the devs as like robots, and they're just sat there and they're like, number go down, number go up. We meant to nerf this, we didn't. There are so many variables in a game. Like, you can nerf one thing and it can have a knock-on effect, like 60 knock-on effects down the road that you weren't expecting. That doesn't mean that they should be like forgiven. Like, if they keep making, quote, fuck-ups, eventually you'll have to be like, this is a shame, but these guys don't know what they're doing. But I think GGG have earned a little bit of leeway, right? They did make PoE1, which was very, very good. And if they're saying, hey, we actually didn't mean to nerf the campaign, we nerfed this other shit and somehow that affected the campaign, we're going to look into it. Fair enough.
And look, a lot of it is just because there's a little bit of like, it's early access, so we're allowed, but we like are firing from the hip a lot here. And the stuff like that, like, let's get it in there, let's try it out, see how people think, and if it's bad, we just undo it, right? Like, we do regress on a decent number of things in the first few days of a release, and so yeah, there are some pretty blatant fuck ups. So yeah, that's exactly what happened with the rare minion life. It was like, why are now, I don't know why it felt this way, but 100% it was the case that the minions was, for some reasons, the rare minions were surviving longer than the rare often, and it's like, well, they don't have anywhere near as much life as the rare, and then again, once people got enough AoE and all of that, it solved it, but it was just a bad experience. There was just nothing good about that.
Right. I think there was definitely a compounding of a few factors that were like on their own relatively small. But the thing is that and this is the question that I have is that like, if people are still having a bad time during the campaign, if they're starting fresh now, because bear in mind as well that people will have an experience and then we'll change the balance behind them, and then they still remember that the experience was bad and they're not playing it again to know that it got better. So the thing is, if you're playing it again and still having a bad experience in the campaign, then that would be a thing where it's like, okay, well, where are the campaign nerfs actually? Like, we have to find where they are, because I don't know that there's anything intentionally done there that we're sort of aware of left. And I think
people don't give a shit if they feel really, really weak. Here's my take. I don't think people care if their character feels ridiculously weak and like you just have no chance. Like, if you go into a campaign, right, and you have no gear, and you see unique monsters and unique rogue exiles, and you just have to say, they're too strong, skip. I actually don't think people mind that, because we've done it in PoE1 where there's like essences or rare beasts that are just too ridiculous and you just skip them, but you knew that if you had a couple life sprig ones, bit of twink gear, you would destroy it. The problem I think people have is not, hey, I feel weak in the campaign. The problem is they can't see an out. Meaning, it's okay to feel super, super weak in a campaign game if you know there's light at the end of the tunnel. And the problem is, when people are looking at the PoE end game, they're just seeing guys that have got life, resist gear, and they're still struggling. And so they're looking at this going, right, well, I'm struggling now. Those guys are struggling at level 90, and that's in like 100 hours time. So do I want to carry on struggling for 90 levels? So I don't think the campaign being difficult is the issue. I think there's no light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I would say.
I think like that one just means that
I can give examples.
There might still be issues.
Yeah.
Sure. Go for it.
So
what are some?
So the number one, especially to me, most oppressive thing is the relative speed of monsters compared to our abilities to set things up. Like, whenever you're
hang on, but that's not a thing that changed though.
No, but that's been continuously bad. It doesn't matter if it's changed or not.
Okay,
It's,
sure. But so what I'm saying is that, but okay, but so this is an
well,
example.
I think that has
But that's
changed.
just an example of something that's bad. So what I'm saying is that's not a thing that changed. So like, if you're talking about like, is it your intention to nerf the campaign?
But
Then
we
no,
are
because
weaker now,
we
right? A
didn't do
lot of
that. But if you're
skills.
saying that's bad, I mean that's a different question, right?
A lot of skills are weaker now, right? They were tuned down on a lot of things and things that people are starting with. Were
So he's biting back a little bit. Maybe he snapped a little bit there, but I think what he's trying to say is, yeah, we know there are a lot of shit things in the campaign. We're aware of it. We don't need you to sit here on podcast for 5 hours and tell us everything that's dog shit about the game. That's just not an enjoyable experience for anybody. The devs, the viewers, the podcast, nobody. So when you say the campaign got nerfed and the devs say, well, we didn't nerf the campaign, the dev wants to know what aspect feels really bad that didn't feel bad before. Because if it felt bad before, then it's just been bad all the time. He's looking to find out, okay, you're telling me we did some extra nerfs. Point me in the right direction. Where are the extra nerfs?
necessarily strong, so that relative speed of the monsters feels extra bad. Like, you want us to set up these combos and stuff, right, where we're throwing down like a cyclone and trying to do like a combo move, but the monsters are way too fast. They're rushing us. It's not even like the bosses are
So
the main problem, right? Like, if you're seeing
So we
like
can-
clips.
Yeah, so let's talk about the monster speed thing. So one of the issues that we have is that if monsters are slower than the player, then combat is optional. Like, it's just 100% the case. Like, you cannot if the monsters are slow, like anytime the monsters are slower than the player, then you can just run past them and they serve no, like, they don't, like, effectively you can just choose whether or not to engage or not. And like, I don't think that kind of gameplay is good. Now there will probably be some areas like, and the thing is, a lot of the time when people talk about
Okay, so a very simple solution to that is they have some sort of radius tag. When a player gets in a certain radius of a monster, the monster speeds up towards the enemy, and then when they're in a certain radius within the player, say, you know, a few pixels, then they slow down. So the combat has come to you and then you stop. I'm hoping he points this out.
stuff like this, it's like there'll be a few areas that are bad.
Because I will say, in my experience of doing dev blogs, it's absolutely pointless to basically go on there and just say, here are bad things without solutions. And I know it's not Zizarin's job, by the way, to come up with solutions, and he's doing a good job of raising points here, so I'm not knocking Ziz in any way. But, you know, I think you have to put some on the table, so I'm sure he will do.
I know there are definitely a few areas where like too many of the monsters are fast. So the Faradin are a good example of that. Where like when you go to the last areas of Act 2, like the Faradin are just really really fast, and there's kind of nothing slow in the area, and so that's an example where like we probably want to make some tuning
I mean,
there.
to get more specific, like I have someone right now literally going through the areas, all areas in the campaign, and listing all the areas that have a disproportionately high number of monsters that are too swarmy or too fast.
Right.
They're doing it literally as we speak up, and my intention after this is to go through. And so, like, I mean, a good example is like the canopy, right?
Yeah,
the
for
canopy.
sure.
The monsters are real fast, and then not only that, you're in a ritual with them in a tight, confined
Yeah.
space, and it just you end up in this kind of moving around with packs. So if you're not fast enough to kill everything, you just get absolutely swarmed, and yeah.
I guess I'm
But
a
the
little.
thing, but just to
well,
follow, just to continue with that though, I just want to mention that like one of the issues we run into is like people will say, oh, you know, like things should never be faster than the player and that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if we did that, then the game would feel pretty lame. So it really is a question of like targeted changes, like finding where the worst things are and then solving that issue.
I really disagree with that. So you were saying like if the monsters are slower than the player, then combat is optional. But like it's an ARPG. We want to kill the monsters. That's where all the loot is. That's where our XP is. Like, sure, you'll have some speedrun scenarios where people are running past them, but usually what ends up happening is that we're running past them, bunching them up in a large bunch and killing a bunch of them, and that just feels really good. That's a core part of ARPGs for a lot of people. So I don't think that being faster than the monster is as bad as you think it is. Like, we actively want to kill monsters. That is the entire premise.
Yeah, but I think it's very evident that style there, bunch up all of the monsters and obliterate them in one shot, and they have no chance of fighting back. They don't like that. And to be honest, I don't really like that either. I do want to feel like I have to kill the monster, but again, it shouldn't be as ridiculous as it is now. I genuinely feel that a really good middle ground would be, hey, the monster aggroes onto the player, they zoom in there, and then you have to begin the combat. So they have all of their speed, they've been triggered by you entering their radius, but then when they reach a certain point, then they slow back down and you have the fight begins. But I don't really agree that we should just always be faster than monsters because, well, that's just kind of silly.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you that gathering killing is fun, right? And you should still be able to do that. But I would, as I said, I don't think anything about the fact that some monsters are faster than the player prevents that. I don't think you can have areas where everything is slower than the player. Like, it really isn't that great. In PoE1, in the distant past, we had that problem, and it just meant that running past monsters was the thing you did all the time. And then there were some changes, like, I don't know how many years ago it was, like, what was it, 4 years or something like that? When was the Act 1 like thing? Like, we made changes where we made a lot of monsters faster than the player. And at the time, and that wasn't negatively perceived at the time, it just made the monsters feel better that we had there. So, like, you absolutely can have monsters faster than the player, and I do think it's important to have those kinds of situations.
Well,
like,
if you're
it just
talking
shouldn't be that it's it's just that, like, you need to make sure you're getting the balance right. And I think that that's like a running.
Okay, so again, I agree but disagree. I presume he's talking about like the way Act 1 absolutely fucks you in the PoE campaign, and it was kind of a tester for PoE2, right? That doesn't feel so bad because even early on in PoE1, by the time you go into the rowers, you can have a Quicksilver. And you can fill that up and run around the monsters. Or if you've got gear, you can obliterate them. So you have tools to deal with the monster speed. I think basically, I understand what Jonathan's saying. Yeah, the aggressive, speedy monsters coming at you make you want to engage in combat, and that should feel better than, in a perfect universe, monsters flying at you and then you killing the monsters should feel better than monsters standing still like they're in a tutorial and then you killing them. However, the balance is ever so slightly off because you don't really have the tools sometimes to deal with the speed. So either slow them down a little bit or give us some more tools. I don't think the vision of GGG is bad here. I don't think it's a bad thing to prefer monsters to fight you and you fight back than it is to just have a blue pack in the corner doing literally nothing. I don't think that's that bad. Just the execution probably needs some work. Like I said, maybe there's the radius thing. Maybe they give us some movement skills earlier on. But I don't think it's a terrible idea. It's just poorly executed.
Theme with PoE2 in general is that the target to hit is smaller. Like, because if we want the combat to be more engaging, then that means there's a smaller target that it puts more pressure on the balance to be right. And so I think that's the main issue that we're running into, is just that it's okay if everything okay, so this is sort of a larger topic, right? But effectively it's like in PoE1 there are so many tools that the knowledge ceiling is absolutely astronomical. And so you have a situation where a good player can completely dominate everything to like the absolute nth degree, right? Now, what that means is that you've got a scenario where the game seems like an impenetrable mountain to a new player, because like if you don't know what you're doing, the game is just like impossible to understand. And it's like there's all these tools that you can use to improve yourself, but the existence of everything like that and like having such a huge skill ceiling means that you can just trivialize the game right at the start. And so like what that also means though is that like if we get balance numbers wrong, like if a monster has like double life by accident in PoE1, it like doesn't even really matter. Whereas if a monster has double life in PoE2, it matters a lot. And so what I'm saying is that the threshold for what is right is like way tighter in PoE2, and so that means it will just take longer to balance and get.
Yeah, so he's pretty much said what I just said. He's saying what's great about PoE1 is you have all these tools. So even if we have got the balance far, far worse, you might not even notice it because you have all these tools to deal with it. But when we take away those tools, which is our vision, we need to get the balance right, and it's not quite right. So there's two things there, isn't there? Either give us more tools or sort the balance, which I quite literally just said. It's almost like I pre-watched this, or I know what I'm talking about, haha. Or you know, the third option is they totally change their vision, which I don't think they're going to do. However, there is one slightly worrying thing there, which is kind of like them saying, we don't want a situation where you become really, really knowledgeable at our game and trivialize it. So it sounds to me like no matter how good you get at PoE2, unless you're obviously using massive leveling gear, you are going to struggle in the campaign because that's what we want. They don't want a guy to be like, this ranger build is actually really, really good when played correctly and you use all the tools because I have all this knowledge, but a new player is going to really, really struggle. They would rather have everyone struggle than have one person or, you know, a group of people really dominate the campaign because they have learned about PoE, and then have another group struggle, and then basically the response to that group is, hey bro, get good because I can do it. They would rather just have the game be balanced in general. I do think that is slightly worrying because an ARPG is all about learning your class and the game and your abilities, so there should be some reward for actually learning an ARPG. I think that's something Chris always used to say, like, bro, if you've studied the meta and you know the ins and out of it, you can dominate trade and like, yeah, you can actually be broken, but that's the reward for learning the game. Whereas actually what it sounds like they want to happen is basically not no skill ceiling, but your skill ceiling shouldn't really impact the campaign that much because it should just be flat out difficult for everybody, but fair. Difficult but fair.
It all correct, but it really is the case, I think, that it's getting all those numbers right that kind of makes it like that will make the combat ultimately fun at the end of the day. And like if we're doing our job correctly, then we'll still have this situation where a good player feels like they dominate and a bad player feels like they have a good time, but we won't have a situation where if you're a good player, the combat is so trivialized that you literally never have a moment where you're in any danger or having any kind of like level of like sort of interest going on. And I think that's the worry that we have when we're looking at things is like, if we get to the point where like a good player never has to face a single challenge ever, then I don't think that that's going to be a game that will ultimately be fun in the long term. And so that's kind of like, and like, so that is to me the reason, like what I fear happening if we just like say, okay, we're just going to like lower everything and make it easy. And that, once again, that isn't to say that we shouldn't necessarily, like maybe Monster Life does have to come down. Like if we're in the wrong band, we just need to lower it and that's fine. Like we will get to the point where that is fun, but we'll do that by while still making sure that we have a good experience for, you know, like ideally for everyone, right? Like it should be the case that is balanceable to that way. It's just a lot harder in PoE2 context.
Well, I think a large portion want like bosses to be what is the challenging content, whereas right now it's almost the reverse, where there's so many clips of like people like dodge rolling away from like packs, right, and they're getting chased down, maybe not having a counterplay, and they're like, oh my god, I'm just being chased down. So, and also I sort of disagree on the Act 1 changes in PoE1 not being negatively.
So I think what he needs to say here is it's because of tools. The reason that experience happens there is because of tools, because obviously as you get further into the campaign and your build gets rolling, you can actually deal with bosses and the monsters because you have all of your tools available. Early on, we don't. So it feels kind of reversed. It feels like the game starts off really, really difficult and gets easier and easier and easier. And I think Ziz wants it to feel the other way around. He wants it to be easier and get harder, if I'm interpreting his words correctly there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think the game should start easier and then bosses are. Well, I understand what he's saying. Yes, bosses should be the most difficult piece of content, not the early campaigns. But yeah, that shouldn't be like misconstrued as, you know, the game should be easier and get harder. No, I think the whole fun of, so maybe this is what GGG are missing. The whole fun of PoE is it's like a choose your own adventure game. So if I just want to go and blast easy maps all day and have no, I'm just not worried about dying. I want to switch my brain off and I just play easy content. I should be able to do that. If I really, really want to challenge myself and do some like Uber content, I should be able to do that. I don't think people enjoy, from my experience, when a piece of hard content is put in front of them that they have no choice to avoid, aka arch nemesis from PoE1, or just some irritating change where you're like, man, like some league mechanics you can avoid. The league mechanics people typically don't like are league mechanics you can't avoid because it's forcing you into a playstyle. And I think the reason people play PoE is because you like to choose your own playstyle and make it as hard or as easy as possible. That would be my question to Jonathan. Like, the idea of making combat super difficult and forced on you and balanced, in effect, sounds really cool, but that can get quite tiring. Like, sometimes a player does want to actually avoid content and just chill out. Like, they should be able to go, I know there is a blue pack over there, but I actually don't want to kill it. I just want to chill through this zone rather than have it thrust upon you and struggle.
Received, I do remember there was quite a lot of people that really didn't like that because of what you mentioned with like the faster monsters is generally a bad thing. So I definitely do disagree with that.
Just because I'm like to have things to actually go and start to address. Like, can I get a gauge on what you think is like where in the game it starts to become a problem, or do you think it's like just straight out of the gate?
Straight out of the gate. Like even the second zone, like the first zone might be okay, but the second zone with the wolves, it's like pretty like instant where I don't feel like I'm getting that like ARPG playstyle.
But won't we be hurting more players than we're helping with that?
By making monsters
won't that
slower?
immediately make it? Yeah, won't that immediately mean that like a ton of players who actually enjoy the game because the combat is engaging immediately, like, what, doesn't it kill the game for them? Like what I'm saying is, like, it's easy to say, like, oh, you make the game easier and everyone's happy, but it isn't the case. Like, a lot of people prefer the game to, like...
And even though I moan, I actually do prefer the game to be more difficult and challenging if it's fair. That is the absolute number one thing that should be pointed out throughout this whole interview. Is the reason people enjoy playing Sekiro is because when that boss is demolishing you, you literally know that if you play the fight correctly in Dark Souls or Sekiro, you will kill the boss. There is no, oh wow, this bullshit happened and I lost. No, you will kill it. So people actually do enjoy difficult combat if it is consistent. The problem with an ARPG is obviously things are randomized. Like a rare monster that spawns is random. It would be interesting if PoE2 had a difficult campaign, but a bit like Dark Souls, everything stayed the same. Meaning, when you turn this corner, there is going to be a rare guy with ice. Not, oh wow, this zone had 3 rares and one of the rares was hasted and that just destroyed me. As opposed to everything is created and put in place with no randomization until you reach maps. Because I actually think that would be a really, really cool game to play through if the actual campaign of PoE was consistent. Again, meaning, right, I've killed this Act 1 boss, and I know in Act 2, when I walk around this corner, there is going to be a fire guy. So I'm ready to roll. And if you've played the campaign a lot, you know to roll there, and if you haven't, he might catch you out. That's a way for people to make the campaign easier for themselves through knowledge than just simply balance. I think there are a load of ways to help the devs in games, and I don't really see people giving actual ideas. They're kind of just saying, slow everything down because it's super fucking annoying. But like Jonathan says, well, you slow everything down, they're probably going to have just as many people go, okay, the game's really boring now.
Actually have some challenge in it. Like, for example, right? Okay, so here's the thing, right? So every night I go home and I play, and I do test runs of everything, right? And it's like, if we made it so that there wasn't any challenge for me in Act 1, I wouldn't play the game anymore. And that isn't helping anyone, right? Like, I need to keep playing the game every night to actually enjoy myself. It's like, if I'm not enjoying myself, then it's like, how can I even develop the game correctly? So on some level, it's like it
Yeah.
has to be fun for me. And I know that if you like if you get to the point of having like everything just be trivial, it's like, well, okay, like why am I even playing this anymore? So that there has to be some level of challenge. Now,
There's just a lot. I just thinking more on this specific. There's a big spectrum here. Like, for example, I know I have seen the feedback of Act 1 minus Canopy and Mana feel generally good on the pacing, the speed of monsters. You
Right.
feel like you can almost do no-hit runs, is like kind of what people have said. And then you get to Act 2, and it's not too bad at the very start. And then you get to the like Halani gates, and it's like, okay, now everything's gone off the
yeah,
reservation.
the Faradin have a problem.
And then you
And
get
there's the Titan Valley as well.
I've seen
Yeah.
a decent spectrum like that, and I 100% want to fix that. Like,
right.
so that's why I was asking you for your example, because there's just a lot of people on the different spectrums here that want different things, and so I'm trying to understand what how much we would need to change things for the discussion with you as opposed to with other players.
Right.
So that's all I was asking there, because I do intend on slowing down those extreme zones, and I think there are like 10 of them. And I think that is at least something hopefully a lot of viewers are going to be happy to hear, which is like, okay, cool, they're going to address those. So the Dreadnought, Utsal, you've got Canopy. We're going to start. Those are the most egregious I'm listing. I'm not saying those are the only problematic ones.
Yeah.
And then you got areas like Titan Valley, which is just like riddled with annoying monsters that are just like out of control. And you got heaps of this. So start there, and we keep working backwards until we catch as much as we can. And it's going to be a lot of different changes. So one could be, okay, like, why is it that there are 6 different varieties, of which all are just, as you've, heard people mentioning, and I think I saw something that you had thing, which is they're playing PoE1. I think, which I thought was a funny comparison.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. They need to, not every monster needs to slow down, but like, for example, some of them can be fast, and maybe the answer is, okay, they should be weaker. So sure, they engage you, but they die quick. Or maybe the answer is like, there's too many of them. And then in a lot of the cases, it's going to be like, okay, here's 6 different types of packs. Well, 6 of them are fast. Well, that's a problem. 5 is fast. That's a problem. 4 are fast. That's a problem. 3 are fast. That's probably still a problem. But 2 are fast. That's probably more acceptable. So you get 2 really slow, maybe 2 fast, 2 kind of in the middle, and you get some big slow monsters, some small monsters, and that distribution isn't quite right in a lot of zones. And so that's why I asked, because I would say some zones have a nice, here are the slow monsters, and here are the fast monsters, and it's kind of cool. You get this like up and down pacing, and it can feel kind of fun, where sometimes you're on edge and sometimes you're just obliterating things. And then you get the ones where you're like, holy, I've just been zoned 3 zones in a row where I'm just on edge, getting swarmed, like absolutely. And that creates this extreme negative feeling of like, I can't do the things that my skills want me to do. And that is bad. And that I definitely want to fix that. And I want to fix that imminently. Like, I'm going to immediately get onto doing that. So there is a huge range of spectrum of players that want different things here.
Yeah.
And I want to at least address that thing, because I know that's just bad. Like, I think that's bad for everyone. I don't think that's bad for some people. I think that's bad for, everyone. It's for a huge majority. So we can start there for sure.
But to be clear, though, like we still do need to have some monsters that are faster than player. It can't be that none are. And like things like the wolves and the...
It's interesting because I feel like that was a really good answer of, yeah, maybe you can have 5 fast monsters, but maybe 12 is too many. And then Jonathan's like, yeah, but just to be clear, I am right. There are instances where monsters need to be faster than players, so shut up. I don't think Mark ever once said during that speech, yeah, let's get rid of all of the slow or all of the fast monsters. He just said, yeah, occasionally, like, there's too many, we'll have to tweak it, but they still should be fast. So they seem to have different ideas on the game, Mark and Jonathan.
In the second area, like, if we didn't have that, then I think that you wouldn't even, like, once again, you wouldn't get the feeling of, like, you would immediately out of the gate have the game as just trivial. And, like, I think that really would hurt the game a lot. Like, I think that would be a big problem. So it's really just a question of, like, if there are parts that are frustrating, we'll address them. But, like, it isn't the case that just everything needs to be slower. It really, really would hurt.
So I think
there's another thing you...
I was just gonna say, I think
Sorry.
there's almost like two different player bases where there are a lot of people that just want to blast and maybe have challenging bosses, and then there are people that want like the entire gameplay, every second to second moment to be like very engaging. So it's I
Well,
guess like
I don't know that I don't know that I agree with that either, because I don't think it's so binary as you say. Like there is a middle ground that will work. Like I'm almost certain that there is, and the way that you get there is by just looking at the individual cases and just fixing every one of them until like the rough edges are all sawed off, all sanded off, and then and then it kind of works. And like you'll get to a point where like you just don't get frustrating experiences anymore because we've managed to sort of fix all of those cases, and that point won't be in a situation where just everything is slow. Like we really will still have a level of engagement there.
I guess the problem with everything being so fast, and part of why I pointed out like everything almost, is because it's such a heavy focus on combo gameplay right now, but it feels like the speed of the monsters are heavily incentivizing like one button builds. Like as soon as I could, I was like, the less I can do, the better everything will feel, just because I don't have time to set up combos. We're getting completely overwhelmed. That's why I pointed out
Well-
everything as a bit of an issue.
Well, it isn't necessarily the case that you have to use a combo on every monster. Like if you've got stuff that's fast, you don't use combos on that, and because it's disrupting you. But then also, it is also important that that monsters do.
I'll be honest, right? It feels like Jonathan is playing the game in his mind. There's a joke that we play PoE in our mind in POB, right? But yeah, in reality, combo like slow enemy coming up towards you, combo skill. Fast enemy coming up towards you, you don't do the combo, you do the single target spell, the quick spell, the one button spell. It's actually in reverse in a weird way, because the slow monster you don't really care about, so you actually don't need to do the combo, because getting the damage out imminently and doing the most amount of damage isn't that important. So you might just choose to say use your arrow twice, as a one button. You might right click them twice because it's lazy and easy, when technically the combo would have done it in one. But well, the slow monster isn't going to kill me, so I'll just do the combo, or I won't do the combo, I should say. But when the big fucker, the fast guy flies at you, that's actually when you think, I am going to die. I need to actually get out my most optimal damage. And that is when you are actually forced to do the one button gameplay, and the one button gameplay doesn't do enough. So when Jonathan's like, yeah, but it's okay that the fast monster stops you doing your combo, that is when you'll do a different skill. Yeah, that's great, but the actual weaker skill doesn't fucking kill the guy, right?
Disrupt your combos, because otherwise your gameplay just degenerates into doing like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Like the monsters have to be able, like there has to be situations where your plans are disrupted.
It's very, very evident Jonathan does not want one button gameplays. 1 2 3 4 5 flask dominate. 1 2 3 4 5 flask dominate. So to be honest, right, if that is the gameplay you enjoy from PoE 1, you may as well pack your bags, because PoE 2 is not going to be the game where you chuck on some music and just chill. It's not happening. It's a totally different game.
In order to like have a situation where you can respond to things, like you actually get some counterplay on stuff like that. And so the monster designs have to reflect that on some level. But like it's always an amount, right? Like there's an amount of that you need, and there's probably too much of that going on. But you still need an amount of that, or it just becomes all flat.
We've been talking about look, the last few days we've been talking about some pretty extreme considerations and things, and talking about the monster life is the main thing, which you could argue is player damage, right? They're obviously
monster life is
to
the
some
easiest
degree.
way. If everything is too weak, then monster life is the way to solve it.
Oh yeah, if there's a few outliers of builds that are find the tricks to do good, then yes, it is. I bring all players up or bring all monsters down. They're the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been talking about a lot of this, and actually going what would we be willing to do here? How would we be willing to change it? What are we willing to test? What are we willing to try? And there's heaps of things on the cards here. Kind of honestly, everything's kind of been on the cards, as long as we don't feel like at the end of the day that we've taken the teeth out of the game in terms of difficulty. That is what's important to us, is making the game still have a feeling of hard, being difficult. And I would say out more than just bosses. Like, it shouldn't just be.
I mean, that is the number one thing I'm getting throughout this whole interview, is the most important thing to GGG is the game feels hard. Not balanced. Not like, I can do this, but it's a bit of a challenge. They want the game to feel hard, as in, this is pretty difficult, this. I'm not sure I can do this. I don't think most players want that. I don't think people mind opting into that boss fight that might be quite hard because they've opted into it. But the whole game just been hard as a vision. Does that line up with an ARPG? Because being a hard game is pretty cool. But being a hard game that you have to play for 200 hours plus a league that then resets and you have to do it all again every 3 months. And then if you're doing multiple characters, you have to keep doing it even more. It can get quite draining. But I think like Jonathan is just, he's making PoE2. It's very evident he's making PoE2. PoE2 is not, hey, we had Path of Exile 1 that had some issues. We're going to really polish it up and sort out the kinks around the edges. No, this is like a totally different game. You might like PoE 1. Doesn't mean you'll like PoE 2. And I think they're okay with that. But if that's the case, then they have to keep PoE 1 going.
That the bosses are the only thing that's difficult.
Sure.
And we certainly don't want it to devolve into what I would argue is, well, I know this is like way further away, but like, again, we're talking about changing. It could be changing anything here. The one thing I also worry about is getting to the thing where I would argue a lot of the difficulty in PoE 1 outside of a lot of the boss fights is just like you occasionally just instantaneously die to something and you're like, I don't even know what I died to. And a lot of that is where you get like, it isn't necessarily from monsters being too hard, and it is often from just like spam and too much stuff going on, combined with like daemons and volatiles and all of that. So making sure we avoid that as well.
But that is the actual issue, though. That all that shit they just said is still in PoE 2. That's what people actually have a problem with. They don't mind putting up with the absolute struggle if when they get to the end of the game, there's some balance in the struggle. But if you're still dealing with unavoidable bullshit, swarming one-shots off screen that you can't see, then there's a problem. Because then you've put up with all that struggle for nothing. At least in PoE 1, you have fun the whole time, and yes, occasionally you get blown up. But to struggle the entire time to get to the end game, and then them still have those issues, that's the problem. Because I don't know if anyone's actually played like high-tier maps in PoE 2. If you're playing tier 15 plus maps, and you miss time you dodge roll on a boss, you're dead. Or you go inside of a breach, you're dead. So it's not really any better. I wonder if they'll talk about that, because it's clearly a problem.
But it does mean in the sense that then you kind of get that, like, okay, you have to have it be that you're engaging with the monsters for it to be difficult. Which kind of means monsters do need to actually pose a threat, and you need to be able to see what they're doing and react to what they're doing. Now, I wouldn't say that's universally perfect, but that's an argument for, like, not wanting to get it to the point where it's too much of that, just like, well, I guess that's an argument for de-swarming things, as you said, which I agree with, by the way. That is like an important thing, because it is kind of getting towards that, and that contributes towards where things are slow and stuff. But I wouldn't personally argue that every zone feels swarmy. I think there's a swarmy argument I 100% want to focus on solving first, and then there's like a certain things are fast and certain things are slow, and maybe there's that. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that, but I just want to, I guess it's more just giving my sense of where I want to make sure we don't end up is in that place, just to make sure, and we want to be real careful about not getting to that point. So I would actually say we're probably a bit too far there in a lot of the areas, but I don't think it is a universal problem right now.
I think also, especially, even though Warrior is, or
I don't know if anyone else is picking up on this with the borderline armchair psychology. We're 25 minutes in. If I was to take a look at Jonathan now, and bear in mind, I'm shit at reading emotions, but I would say Jonathan is looking across at someone or something, or he's in his own head at the moment, and he's blankly staring forward, and he's thinking, fucking hell, how much longer have I got to sit through this fucking bullshit of people telling me my game's trash when they don't know what the fuck they're talking about? Like, his body language to me, it seems like it's giving off fucking hell. Shut the fuck up, bro.
Mace heals are particularly strong now due to being able to use a shield, but it can feel very bad that like every damage node like has a downside, whereas isn't really the case for the other builds where like with the maces it's like, yeah, you get 40% increased damage but 5% reduced attack speed, and reduced attack speed, especially with all these combos, can feel particularly bad compared to others. I would say like maces are kind
I feel like Jonathan like raised his eyebrow and he's totally fucking checked out. I feel like he's not said anything in about 10 minutes.
of good right now, but a lot of that is a shield.
I actually do think there is a bit too much of the. I actually like a little bit of like he may be a cluster or two having the kind of upside downside, but it's honestly something we've aside. You know, obviously keystones have upside downside, but yes, there's true that probably there's kind of too many passives, especially in the warrior section, that are a little bit too giving downsides. Where it was something honestly that's a bit experimental to PoE2. Like we didn't have that in PoE1, and we were like, let's give it a go, and maybe we went a little bit overboard with it in that part of the tree. But I don't hate it as a concept. I think it's just that it's a little bit too saturated there. I will agree with you there 100%. I would say, as people hopefully would know, we're going to iterate on that passive tree a million times. So it'll find its sweet spot for sure. And it's definitely not there yet.
I do think it's important though that like keystones can be felt. And so,
all right, I feel like I don't actually need to know or watch any more of this. So I feel like here's how it's going to go. Zizaran's going to give an idea or a point, and Mark's going to kind of talk about the point and say, that's not a bad idea. There's loads of things we're thinking of. We could do that. We could do this. But look, we just want the game to be good. We're really trying. I think that's the vibe we're getting, right? It's really, really early on in development, probably earlier on than we think. Even though they're putting it out on Steam and it's been air quote released, it's probably really, really early on in development. There's probably easily a year to go. So Mark is kind of playing the good cop. And I feel like Jonathan just occasionally comes in and just goes, yeah, but I just want you to know, lads, we're still doing it my way. And I am right in my idea. Like...
No, we're not talking case.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say keystone. I was saying notables can be felt. And so part of the reason for the upside downside thing is that like it lets you do a larger damage bonus because it's got the downside, and therefore you're going to really feel that damage bonus.
No.
Yeah, but let's be honest, mate. The actual upside is not worth the downside most of the time. So cool idea. Don't disagree that upside downside is not a bad idea, but you've got to make the downside at least unique that you can deal with, or the upside really worth it. But just saying, hey bro, now you attack really slow for like a slight damage gain, that's not really very fun. They haven't I will say this, they haven't really mentioned the word fun a lot. They've said like balanced, challenging, difficult. The game still should be fun. That is why people play PoE. They want to have fun. They don't want to play an ARPG on their own for 100 hours to be depressed.
They are
And
good.
so, like,
I think it's the frequency
it's
of them
finding,
in that part of the tree.
But I'm saying that you can find another way maybe to do that. But it's like, I do think that like having that feeling of like I really felt that node is something that we like. That is a thing that you do get. That you know
that is important in our passive tree philosophy. Yes, is that the before and after of taking a notable, especially the first. Obviously, nodes become less valuable as you get higher level because they're just saturating into a bunch of diminishing return. Well, not diminishing returns, but more like, you know, the 500 to 520% increase is going to matter less than the 0 to 20 and whatnot. But especially for the first chunk of the game, we want it to be that every notable is felt. Like you're like, I definitely now can feel the difference, and I would say
right. So actually, this is a very interesting point, because what I was saying was once you get to like level 50 in PoE, and you build on a 4-link or a 5-link or whatever, and you've got your first few notables and your first few passive points, you're pretty much done with the game. I'm interested to see if Zizaran says anything about this, because from my feeling and people that I've spoke to, Like, when you get to level 40, 50, 60, it takes a long time now to get to like 80, 90, and you're never going to get to 100 these days. So if you can't feel it, because like he says, you're starting to get these diminishing returns and those notables aren't made to be as impactful, you don't even want to carry on playing. That's actually a massive reason of why I'm not playing the game. Because you put up with the slog from the campaign, you come out of the campaign like level 60, and then you look at your next 20 levels and you're like, yeah, that's not actually going to change the game that much for me. That's literally my number one problem. And they're kind of saying that that's intentional, that they want the first few nodes to be really good and then the rest of your nodes to be kind of shit. Which, if you want to think about it in a different way, you could argue, well, how do you know which ones are going to be diminishing returns later on? Because they don't know what passive tree you're going to take. So the one that they think is diminishing returns, I might actually path to that first. So that would lead me to believe that the game is leaning more in the direction of set builds for set classes, which is why I think the game is kind of shit and it's looking like Diablo. Because they're going to kind of make the tree fit the build and then go, right, these first 10 notables around this area where we know that this build takes this, they can be weak. Or, sorry, they can be strong. But then these ones that are further out, they're going to be a lot weaker. And I don't really like the idea of that. I just think all the passives should be good. Getting a notable should feel good all the time. Otherwise, why are we spending hundreds of hours to level up from like 60 to like 90? For what? A few % WED damage.
Yeah, a lot don't hit that mark. Some do, some don't. But yeah, we've been trying new things there, so.
Yeah.
Bit of a pivot.
Yeah. So the next question, I want to talk
One thing I will say, and I'm nitpicking here because I'm not doing the interview. But I think it would just be nice for him to say, hey, by the way, I understand these are really difficult questions, and you probably, if the cameras were off, just want to tell me to fuck right off. And I know you can't do that, and I'm not trying to intentionally like antagonize you. It's just I've got to ask the community questions. I'm sure you'll understand, you know, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do the interview, especially an interview that's not a particularly nice one. Maybe he said that beforehand and it got cut, or he says it afterwards. But I feel like he needs to G him up a little bit, because right now Jonathan's not looking too great, man. I think Jonathan needs a little pick-me-up.
A bit about the fact that you have only done like the crazy large changes between seasons, and you talked a little bit about that you felt forced to treat the game like it was released. Are you still happy with doing only large balance changes between patches, or is that something you would maybe revisit with something like every 2 weeks, especially with like a warning period, like changes are coming in 4 days?
It's hard. I don't think that you can just nerf people in the middle of a league no matter what.
No, I don't think
we
you
get
can.
highly punished for that. Look, I mean, people are going to be unhappy about nerfs whenever we do them, as you know, like as we can see. But like it is actually strictly worse if you get nerfed while you're playing the game. Now we're in a position now where, because things like are probably possibly.
I totally get it. But this goes against what he's saying. This is where it's a bit of a contradiction. So number one, I understand what he's saying. He's saying this really fucks us. As in, if we have a guy enjoying a tornado build or whatever, and we nerf him even though that is the correct thing for the long-term vision of the game, we're probably going to lose that player forever. And even though you don't want to admit it, this game is a business, and that is how shit works, and you know, they have to look after their selves, so to speak, right? But you can't then also say we're in early access and we can change what we want, so stick with us, and we're really behind in development and so much shit can change. It's either like you're in early access and all of the players know shit's going to change all the time, cry about it, or you're treating this like a release and then people are going to judge you like it's a release. I think they could do themselves a hell of a lot of favors and breathing room if they just did an update. When you signed in, even if you had to click it every single time, it popped up and it said, we are in early access, and at any moment, your build can be made to simply stop working, right? We want you to A-OK that. Because then I think they could actually do some changes, but treating it like it's release, I don't think that's actually that good. Because, yes, little Timmy gets to enjoy his tornado build and not get nerfed, or something doesn't get tweaked, but for someone like me, I'm not playing the game now, right? No, I don't think anyone in my guild is playing the game. So we have to wait, like, what, 3-4 months till we can retry the game? It's not great.
Undertuned that we can just do mid-league buffs, and so that means you'll see way more patch changes happening now, because like it's okay to do major buffs during the middle of a league,
which we
just can't do. Yeah, which we're doing now.
I generated a relatively large list yesterday.
Yeah.
Which I know we have that whole philosophical discussion earlier about player power. Well, like there are many builds, many skills that are underneath, because obviously otherwise I wouldn't be have spent a good chunk of the day going through and assessing what needs to be increased, right? So like I don't want it to take as like I don't want people to take away from that as being like no, we're happy with the current balance. Like obviously not. We're still going to make changes. We're still going through everything and we'll get to that sweet spot for sure, but like
I mean, it's going to end up feeling like a season of buffs this time, and the reason why it'll feel that way is because like the medicine has gone down now. Now we can start on all of the actual like all of the positive buff parts, and so it's like like last season we just weren't even in a situation.
Bear in mind, guys, right? Bear in mind, I'm not trying to big up the developers here, but PoE2, sorry, PoE1, especially the last year, 2 years, really did become absolutely fucking ridiculous. When you have groups like Empyrean Gaming shitting out 46 billion uniques a map, and Fubgun, and all those people that, let's be honest, break the entire game, and then post videos on how to do it, and then here's how you make X amount of currency per second, and here's how you craft all these GG items, and da-da-da. PoE2 is like detox, man. It's like you've been on all of the caffeine, you've been having a nice Starbucks coffee every single day, and then you've come to PoE2, and for a month there's been no coffee. And now you've got the headaches, and now you're feeling pretty damn rough, and you're like, man, please, can you just give us an espresso, bro? Can you just give us something? They're like players. I do feel like players do need a bit of a detox from PoE1. Not to the degree of PoE2, because there's literally no crafting and there's a lot of shit stuff about it, but there are people that are probably new from PoE that just followed the YouTubers, played for a year or two, and think that is PoE. But I did come from the start of PoE1, and it wasn't always this ridiculous. So going to PoE2 isn't that bad for me, but I still want it to be fun, and that's why I'm not playing it at the moment, because I'm not a paid games tester. Okay, I don't make videos, I don't make money like that. So yeah, your Zizarins, your Mathals, they can go and play the game, your Quins. But I'm only playing games that I find fun, and at the moment, it's not very fun.
Right, because it's like you already had.
We genuinely tried to. We genuinely tried to. We had this plan of like, bring all the top end outliers down, and then make sure everything is feeling good in the middle. And we started with the bringing outliers down, and then all of a sudden, and this is why the patch notes were so late, we were like, oh no, like we're like running out of time here. Like we thought we could get through more of the balance and start bringing more things up. We didn't get to do all that we had hoped to do. But like by that point, it's kind of too late. And so like we're going in, and then now our idea here is like, we thought we were, like literally up until the last minute, we're like, okay, we're gonna keep going. Right, let's start buffing. Let's look at weak things. And like, it just ended up being too time consuming. And so the answer here is now though, it's like, well, let's just keep going. And so obviously,
so that makes total sense. They ran out of time, and they wanted to get the update out. But I feel like you have to be quite smart. I feel like games don't get many chances these days. You have your release, and then you have a couple major updates. And if the couple major updates suck, they're not going to hang around. I really think they should have just delayed this update, because I don't know about you. I don't actually care about PoE2 leagues. Like, PoE2 Dawn of the Hunt means nothing to me, because to me the game is in early access. This isn't like a PoE1 league. This is just a random update to an early access game. And when the devs do an update, to me that means, hey, we're ready. We want to show you something. And so the players judged it on that, and then they were like, wait, this is a pile of shit. They'd have just been better waiting a month. Like, if Dawn of the Hunt came out in, a month's time, and it had all of this, plus all of the buffs and all of the fixes for the speed, which they said they're going to do, that would have been far better received than Dawn of the Hunt releases, everybody bitches, and then they do some updates. I don't get the desperation to release updates in early access. I don't get it. There's no rush. Early access means, hey, we're making the game. It's not finished. And maybe they're just desperately trying to get PoE2 out as soon as possible. So they're doing these updates, churn them out so they can get feedback and they can get going again and again. But there's no rush to bring out PoE2. Frade said, my co-worker never played PoE1 and started playing PoE2 when it launched. Has no idea about the drama and doesn't delve deep. Like a regular normie said, he enjoyed the game. Yeah. So if you've never experienced... I said this in my most recent video. It's kind of like if you've... I'm not saying like your co-worker, his opinion is irrelevant, but it's kind of like a guy that drives a really shitty car but he's never driven any other car. You try telling him that his car is shit, he'll be like, well, man, this thing gets me to work and back. I actually really like it. I don't know what your problem is. It doesn't mean that that guy's wrong, but probably objectively his car is shit. And it probably could do with an upgrade, but he's still enjoying it. So, like, there are people out there, like your co-worker, that are just like, ignorance is bliss. They've never played PoE1. They don't know what they're missing. They don't know what's not in the game. Like, put it this way. Somebody that's never played PoE1 and goes to PoE2 is never going to think to themselves, I really wish Expedition let me re-roll my suffixes more often, or I really wish I could use a crafting bench. They're just not going to think that. They're just like, oh, well, that's not in the game, so I don't do that. It doesn't mean they're wrong for enjoying it, but it doesn't mean they're right either. It doesn't mean you can't critique it. But streamers do have this perception of like, the game must be non-existent combat where you one-shot everything, so I can get to endgame and I can start churning out guides for money. Like, there does have to be a bit of balance.
The first few days is really like looking at all the.
I'm really surprised though that they're basically saying, yeah, the reason this patch is so shit is we didn't finish it, but we released it anyway. Why? I'd love to know that. Why? Maybe it was certified on Steam and just had to come out at a certain time. Maybe they've worked it out business-wise that you might lose X amount of players for a slightly shitty launch, but you'll gain more because there is an update. Like, players only come back to games when there's updates. So if PoE2 doesn't get regular updates, that it will die. So they're desperately trying to keep it alive and churning out. But in my opinion, it's a brand new game. You should take your time with it. There's no rush. Yeah, so basically, this is DayZ. Meaning everybody that played DayZ Armor, that liked riding around bloody... I can't even remember the towns now. Northwest Airfield. And riding around in the car with their military sniper rifles, hiding in bushes, killing each other, throwing grenades, doing all this good stuff. but it was built on the Armor engine and it was super fucking laggy and the mod system was crap and there was nothing. All people wanted was good FPS, servers, like day-night cycles that looked cool, weather, you know, and like more cars, more guns, and just more fun. They just wanted DayZ with better upgrades and FPS. That is what people want from PoE 1. Wow, PoE 1's awesome. I hope it, you know, cleans up the edges, rounds the edges. I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but that is not what this is. PoE 2 is a totally different game. A totally different game. They're not. You can like PoE 1, it does not mean you will like PoE 2. And I think they are kind of trying to say, hey, that's okay then. PoE 2 is not the game for you. And that's cool if you then keep PoE 1 alive. But they haven't updated PoE 1 in like a year, really. So if you're going to have that stance of like, yeah, if you don't like PoE 2, go play PoE 1, you can't really not make any leagues for a year.
Back and going, what are the biggest problems, right? And this is where you get the Act 3 changes, you get the minion builds, you get the big things. And we are trying to address all of that. And I understand just game-wide balance is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's just going to be like, all right, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill. Like, let's go. What are we changing? What are we changing? What are we changing? Going through literally every single one on every single skill tree and every single reservation. And then we're going to go, okay, well, you've still got Blood Mage and Acolyte of Chiola sitting there at 0%, 0.1% played. Okay, well, clearly not doing well enough. Let's target that and just go on and just keep... We're just going to keep iterating through until we can get as far as we can, and maybe we catch everything, maybe we don't, but like the intention is to not stop just because the release day happened. Like, we had a goal, we didn't achieve that goal, and so we just need to keep going.
And do you have like a rough idea? Like you were saying you were working on a lot of things to be buffed. Do you have a rough idea on how early we could be seeing those already?
Well, we'll be seeing them continuously. Like okay, so this was a...
Like 2 days?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like, this was a
perfect,
funny
that's
thing
what I wanted.
because okay, like, so like one of the things I think that was majorly misinterpreted, that things we're working on post, was like, this was the things we were working on that day. Like, literally, that was that day's worth of work that we were talking about. And then the next day, it's like, well, now we're doing this Act 3 stuff. And like today, we'll be doing...
Oh, well, I mean, then that's just a really, really stupid idea, to be honest. Because I think everybody would interpret that. When the devs put out a post and they say, hey, I know you're really annoyed, here's what we're working on, and then it doesn't contain most of the issues, most people were like, oh, well, I guess they don't think that's an issue. That post did not say, and I don't know if that is Jonathan gaslighting or just trying to dig himself out of a hole, but that post did not say, these are the things we're working on just for today. Tomorrow we'll have some new stuff, so stay tuned for tomorrow's post. That post made it sound like, yeah, these are the things we're working on, get over it.
a bunch of other stuff, and like, you know what I'm saying, it's like every day we're going to be like continuing to iterate and do stuff. It's like,
That's
so
good.
the idea that someone's like, oh, they're not even acknowledging this thing, it's like, well, come on, we've literally had, like, that was one work day.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
there's more stuff coming, right? Like,
Which
you know,
we need to be more clear about.
Sure.
We'll try to be more
Right.
more specific about that. But yes,
I mean,
like,
the one that I found the most funnier with that is, it's like, I'm like, okay, we're going to look into all this Act 3 stuff, but in the meantime, we'll just add some checkpoints. And it's like, the reason I put that in there is because, like, that's literally a thing we already noticed was bad. And it's like, it's not like hurting anyone to add some more. So it's like the idea that we're like, oh, we're just going to solve the whole thing by adding checkpoints was like ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
obviously that wasn't the case. It was just like,
Yeah, but if that's what you say, right? I'm pretty sure that's Mathel's video. Mathel's video said they're trying to solve the issue with checkpoints when checkpoints aren't the problem. But Jonathan never made it clear in that post of these are the things we're doing today. Tomorrow, the next day, the next week, we will be doing more. That post honestly said, okay, we've listened to your feedback. Here's what we're going to do about it. That was terribly worded.
here's just the thing that I can just tell someone, hey, go do this while I'm looking at this, you know, and like, and so they did that, and so then that'll go in the next version. But you know, like, it's like, then it's like the next like 4 hours after that, I'm like sitting there going through areas and trying to work out what's, you know, like what needs to improve about them.
Yeah, so checkpoints is kind of something I want to talk about with the large zones and stuff. And you made a post yesterday talking about that several Act 3 zones would be reduced in size.
Mhm.
But as a core idea, is Path of Exile 2 being aimed more at like doing one long playthrough and finishing up one character rather than do like 5 to 10 characters and the people that are playing thousands of hours per year?
I mean, I don't. That's once again, it's not like I'm not targeting one or the other. Like the this your second. I mean, like if you're doing multiple playthroughs, the game is a lot faster just due to the like items and stuff that you have. Like that is definitely the case.
I do agree with that.
Like,
To be honest, well, if you do a second character, even if you are SSF and you're not like trying to twink your character out crazy, you are going to have some gear, so it will be a bit easier.
A big thing that's missing.
Like making multiple characters in a league is certainly something that I expect and want you to be able to do.
Well, a big thing that's missing comparatively to PoE1 is our ability to speed ourselves up, right, on our second characters. In PoE1, you have things like 7 League Step and stuff like that. And at least so far, we don't have that many alternatives for that. And our movement abilities are completely different. No Quicksilver. So even though like we can kill the bosses faster, but since the zones are so
That's true.
large, we can't get like the same amount of speed on our second and third character onwards that we would be expecting in PoE1.
Well, is the zone largeness issue like I mean, Act 3 was the one I would say that was like pretty obvious as far as like things like that go. But if it comes to other zones, it's just a question of what are those zones and which are the issues. And like also the other thing is that like generally speaking, like once you know how the zone works, there are ways then to like to know what you're looking for and sort of how to go places and what to do. So to the extent that isn't the case, that's why like when we're looking at like that's why when we're looking at Act 3, it's not just make this zone smaller. It's like what's actually the reason why a player who is experienced is not able to find the thing that they're looking for, right? And that's where we come to like, oh, there's this whole area over here that you could just walk down and you have no idea whether or not that's important or not. And so then you end up doing that and it just wastes a bunch of your time. But like the intention is to make it so that like if you know what you're doing, then you know where to go and like you don't have a problem with that. So like that's why a lot of the changes in Act 3 are just like, okay, yeah, like you randomly get bad luck and then the Chimera wetland has the stupid Y fork thing in it and like takes ages to go one way or the other. It's like you get rid of all of that stuff and then the zones won't feel so large because like you'll know where you're going and you'll know how to get, it kind of works out that way.
But I do know the layouts though, and they are very large even with knowing the layouts, just because our movement speed is like relatively slow. Like even like Matlan waterways before they're getting reworked, hopefully the rework makes them a lot slower, but I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not like backtracking into the wrong area, making it longer. It is just a lot of these zones are very long.
Like I understand that area is a challenging one, and it's hard for us to actually fix like trivially because just the way that the level generation works there's not an easy like it's not like okay like we other areas we can.
I mean, they could just say something like, if you've killed the campaign boss, then your movement skills now unlock at level 10 or something, right? Like they could do that to incentivize new characters.
And change the layouts very easily because like of the way that our generation works, but that area has a very fixed type of layout, and so it's going to take more effort, which is why it was on the list because I didn't have an immediate like thing I could do that day to sort that one out. But like I understand that that's an area of concern for people, but like once again it's like that's a specific area, and I wouldn't say that like that the issues that area has would apply to the whole game. Like that's just an area, a specific problem for that particular area.
Is speeding the player up an option? Like, is that something you'd be willing to consider?
No.
Well, it sort of depends on how it was done. Like, we've discussed some things in that area, like before. I'm not necessarily against that, but it would have to be.
Second character should be good, man. Just if you've killed the final boss of the campaign, just give some low-level Quicksilver flasks or like... They don't want people speedrunning and ignoring monsters, no. But I do think your second playthrough should be speedier, but you could argue simply by killing the monsters quicker and having gear, you're gonna do it quicker. You know?
Done in a way that didn't compromise the combat and compromise like the like it shouldn't be the case that you because this is the issue with this, right? Is that speeding up the player is if you speed up the player to the point where they're once again faster, then always faster than the monsters, then you get back to the like combat doesn't work anymore, like you combat is optional kind of like situation again. So like we would have to find a way to do that wasn't going to like break that as well. So there might be something we can do there, and we've kind of been discussing that. Because I'm not exactly wanting to subject people to like running when they're not doing anything, right? But it's just a question of finding a way to do that that's not gonna.
It's hard to say anything specific because like there's a little bit of like the moment we say a specific solution, people might hold us accountable to that in a degree, and
like we haven't tried it yet, so we can't.
We have been talking about it. We do have some options we want to try. We just don't want to talk about them before we try them.
Right. Okay.
But like, yes, I agree. Now you mentioned one other thing there, just because
I will say the podcast does give off the vibes that they want to make a good game. Also, I just randomly picked up this £2 coin. This £2 coin is as old as me. Check that out.
I don't want to gloss over things too much, which is you mentioned the Twink unique problem, which is 7 league steps. There are many more items in PoE1 that you can use to streamline the efficiency on reroll. That is still very deficient, yes. It will come in time, I assure you. It's just a matter of we did higher level uniques this time. Obviously, they're not going to have low level item requirements. Maybe next time there's a more even split. I don't know. We just need to keep going with the uniques and we'll eventually get there. We do have some designs that achieve specifically the low level high movement speed boots. We do have that as a thing that I definitely already have designed. I think it's just waiting on the art and then it's going to go in. But
it's interesting, man. I just feel like Jonathan and Mark are not on the same page. That's probably why it makes a decent team though, because there's a bit of balance. I mean, I'm gonna stop the recording there at least, because I think we've kind of got the gist of it now. It's very evident, what's going on. They're just going to be constantly updating, and if it's really not your style, don't bother playing it. Wait 6 months, give it another go. Otherwise, watch some streamer have a go at it. Maybe jump in here or there, see how you feel, and give some feedback. But this is definitely not even close to like the end of the game, because like he said there, we've got a load of low level uniques that aren't even in the game. Well, that would make a massive difference. Like quite literally, if you were playing the campaign and you were struggling and you were a sorcerer and some low level 1 drop, that might just make the next 20 levels of your life go by and a lot easier. So I think they definitely want the game to be PoE2, and they're still working on it, and they've admitted to get some shit wrong, and I don't know, it wasn't too bad. Well, I'll carry on listening to the rest of it on Twitch, but I'll stop the recording there because it's been way too long anyway.